Have you ever found yourself sitting alone with a cup of coffee, scrolling through old photos and wondering, where did everyone go? Maybe your kids are grown and living far away. Maybe retirement changed your daily rhythm. Or perhaps, like so many others, you're simply craving deeper, more meaningful friendships, but aren't sure where to begin at this stage in life. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, studies have shown that nearly 1/3 of adults over 50 experience loneliness regularly. And not the kind of loneliness that fades after a weekend. This is the deeper, more persistent kind that can chip away at your well-being over time. But here's the good news. It's absolutely possible to build new, lasting friendships no matter your age. And not just acquaintances or people you wave to at the grocery store, but the kind of connections that light you up inside, that make life feel richer, fuller, and more joyful. In this video, we're going to explore how to do just that. We'll talk about what makes friendships meaningful in later life, why they matter more than ever, and most importantly, how you can start creating them, even if it feels intimidating. You'll hear real stories, scientific insights, and practical steps you can try starting today. Trust me, this journey is worth it. Before we keep going, I'd love your help with something. If you're enjoying this video so far, comment Y below. If not, comment N. It helps me know what's working and what to improve. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Now let's dive deeper. Let's start with why friendship matters so much in this stage of life. You may have heard of the Harvard study of adult development. It's the longest-running study on happiness and well-being, spanning over 80 years. The biggest finding? Strong relationships, more than wealth, fame, or even physical health, are the most consistent predictor of a long, happy life. In other words, the people we surround ourselves with truly shape our experience of the world. But here's the thing, the nature of friendships often shifts after 50. Maybe your social circle used to revolve around work, or your children's school events, or shared parenting routines. And when those routines change, due to retirement, relocation, divorce, or simply time, so do your relationships. This is completely normal. Life changes, and so do our social patterns. But just because some friendships fade, doesn't mean you can't build new ones that are even more fulfilling. Here's something I hear all the time. But I'm too old to make new friends. That is simply not true. I remember talking to a woman named Carol at a community center where I volunteer. She's 67 and recently divorced after 35 years of marriage. She told me she hadn't made a new friend in over a decade and didn't think she still had it in her. But she decided to try something small. She signed up for a watercolor painting class. Not because she wanted to be an artist, but because she liked the idea of sitting quietly and doing something creative. And guess what? 2 months later, she has a group of 5 women she paints with every Tuesday. They go for coffee afterward. They laugh about everything. She says it feels like being in high school again, but with way less drama. It all started with one small step. That's often all it takes. So how can you take that first step? One powerful strategy is to reconnect with your curiosity. What are the things that spark your interest, even just a little? Maybe it's gardening, cooking, book clubs, hiking, or even learning a new language. Following your interests naturally puts you in environments where like-minded people gather. And shared interests form the perfect foundation for new connections. But here's an important point. You have to show up. I know that sounds obvious, but it's actually one of the biggest challenges people face. The couch is cozy. Netflix is familiar. But friendships don't form behind screens and closed doors. They form when you're present, open, and available to others. In fact, a fascinating study published in the journal Personal Relationships found that it takes about 50 hours of interaction to go from acquaintance to casual friend, and over 200 hours to develop a close friendship. That might sound like a lot, but if you're joining a weekly group or class, the time adds up faster than you'd think. The key is consistency. Think of it like planting seeds. You won't see flowers on the first day. But if you keep watering, keep showing up, keep engaging, eventually, those seeds bloom into something beautiful. Another helpful tip: be the first to reach out. I get it. Putting yourself out there can feel awkward, especially if you've been out of practice. But chances are, the other person is feeling just as hesitant. A simple comment like, "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" Or, "I really enjoyed talking to you. Want to exchange numbers?" can open the door. Most people are waiting for someone to make the first move. I once heard from a retired teacher named Frank who joined a local walking group. He told me the first 2 weeks he barely said a word. Everyone else seemed to know each other already, and he didn't want to interrupt. But on the 3rd week, someone asked him about the old school sweatshirt he was wearing. They struck up a conversation, and now he's not just walking. He's playing poker every Thursday night with that same group. The smallest gestures can spark the biggest connections. And remember, friendship isn't about being impressive. It's about being real. Vulnerability, sharing a little about yourself, even if it's just how your day is going, creates space for others to open up to. It builds trust. It deepens bonds. That's where the magic happens. So, if you've been feeling stuck or unsure about how to make new friends at this stage in life, take heart. You're not alone, and you're certainly not out of options. In fact, this might be the perfect moment for a fresh start. In the next part, we'll talk about common fears that hold people back, like rejection, awkwardness, or not knowing what to say, and how to overcome them with confidence and grace. We'll also look at how social habits can change our brain health and emotional well-being in ways you might not expect. See you there. Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This video is for informational purposes only and is based on publicly available research. Everyone's health is different, so always consult your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your lifestyle, diet, or exercise routine. Scientific knowledge is always evolving, and what works for one person may not work for another. Now, let's keep going. Earlier we talked about showing up, following your interests, and being willing to take that first small step. But let's be honest, it's not always that simple. Sometimes the biggest challenge isn't what to do, it's the emotional roadblocks that stand in the way. And one of the biggest ones? Fear of rejection. It doesn't matter how old we get, that little voice still pops up. What if they don't like me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I'm just not enough? These thoughts are deeply human. Our brains are wired for connection, but also for protection. And the fear of social rejection, even mild, can actually activate the same brain regions as physical pain, according to studies using fMRI scans. That's why it feels so real. But here's something powerful to remember. Those feelings don't have to control your actions. One study published in Psychological Science found that simply expecting acceptance, rather than rejection, can change the way you're perceived. People who approach social situations with warmth and openness are seen as more likable, even if they're nervous inside. It's okay to feel awkward. Awkward is just part of being human. Think about how many lifelong friendships started with someone tripping over their words or laughing at the wrong moment. Imperfection is relatable. It's what connects us. And if you ever feel like your social skills are rusty, don't worry. They're like muscles. The more you practice, the stronger they get. A woman named Janet once told me she felt invisible after turning 60. Her friend group had dwindled, and she was tired of feeling like a third wheel. So she did something brave. She signed up for a volunteer role at her local animal shelter. The first day, she said barely a word. But by week 3, she was chatting with a fellow volunteer named Linda about their favorite rescue stories. They now meet every Saturday for brunch. The first few interactions might feel stiff. That's okay. Keep showing up. And while we're talking about social situations, let's touch on an important skill that sometimes gets overlooked: listening. Building strong friendships isn't just about sharing your story. It's about making space for someone else's. Active listening, really tuning in, making eye contact, asking follow-up questions, builds trust faster than any witty story ever could. In fact, researchers at the University of Chicago found that people who ask more questions in conversations, especially follow-up questions, are perceived as more responsive and, ultimately, more likable. So instead of worrying about what to say next, just focus on being present. That alone can be incredibly powerful. Now, what if you're thinking, but everyone already has their friend group, where would I even fit in? That's a common concern. But here's the truth. Many people are quietly hoping to expand their social circles, just like you. They just don't always say it out loud. In fact, the AARP found that nearly half of adults over 50 feel isolated, but most of them assume they're the only one. So if you take the step to reach out, you're not intruding. You're offering a connection that someone else might be craving too. And friendships don't always have to come from brand new sources. Sometimes, rekindling an old friendship can be just as meaningful. Have you ever thought about someone from your past, maybe a high school buddy, an old coworker, or even a neighbor you lost touch with, and thought, I wonder what they're up to? Reach out. A simple message on social media or a short email can go a long way. I've heard so many stories of friendships reigniting after years apart, simply because someone was bold enough to say, "Hey, I was thinking about you." That kind of authenticity is rare and deeply appreciated. Now let's talk about another beautiful benefit of forming new friendships later in life: the way it affects your brain and body. You've probably heard the phrase social health. But did you know that staying socially active can actually protect your cognitive health? A study published in the journal Neurology found that people with strong social ties in later life had a 70% lower risk of cognitive decline compared to those who were more isolated. Another study from the University of Michigan showed that engaging in regular social interaction can enhance memory and even boost problem-solving skills. Why? Because when we engage in conversation, share stories, and interact with others, we stimulate multiple areas of the brain. It's like a workout, but for your mind. Even better, social engagement can help lower stress. When we connect with others, our bodies release oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which helps reduce cortisol, our primary stress hormone. This means that spending time with friends doesn't just make us feel good, it's actually good for us. But don't mistake quantity for quality. You don't need a dozen close friends to feel fulfilled. Research consistently shows that having just one or two close, trusted relationships can provide the same psychological benefits as having a wide social network. So if you're thinking, I don't need a whole new circle, I just want one good friend, that's more than enough. That one friend can make all the difference. And sometimes, friends come from the most unexpected places. One man I spoke with, Arthur, 72, met his best friend while waiting in line at the pharmacy. They got to chatting about the long wait, shared a few laughs, and exchanged numbers. Now they'd play chess twice a week and swap gardening tips. Friendship doesn't always arrive with a grand introduction. Sometimes it shows up in the quietest, most ordinary moments. So if you're willing to stay open, stay curious, and stay brave, the connections you're seeking may already be closer than you think. In the next part, we'll talk about some of the deeper mindset shifts that can help you overcome lingering doubts and embrace new friendships with confidence. We'll also tackle the myth that older adults are set in their ways, and how you can prove it wrong by continuing to grow, connect, and thrive. You won't want to miss it. Let's be honest. Sometimes the biggest challenge in building new friendships isn't finding people or starting conversations. It's what's going on inside. You might catch yourself thinking, I'm too set in my ways. Or maybe, it's too late to start over. Those quiet little thoughts can be incredibly powerful. But here's the truth, growth doesn't stop at 50, or 60, or even 90. Your capacity to connect, evolve, and deepen relationships continues for your entire life. Science backs this up. Brain plasticity, the ability for your brain to form new connections, doesn't disappear with age. In fact, engaging in social and emotional experiences actually helps preserve that flexibility. There's a beautiful story I heard recently from a man named Jorge. He retired at 68 after a long, busy career in engineering. For decades, his life had been all about projects, deadlines, and numbers. After retiring, he felt lost. For the first time in years, he had no meetings to attend, no team to collaborate with. Just long, quiet days. His daughter encouraged him to try something new, anything. So, reluctantly, Jorge joined a community ukulele class. He didn't even like ukuleles. But within a few weeks, he found himself laughing with the group, learning chords, and even performing at a local senior event. More importantly, he met new people who brought joy and rhythm into his daily life. Jorge told me, "It turns out, I'm not just an engineer, I'm also a beginner musician, a storyteller, and a pretty decent friend." Isn't that amazing? Sometimes we discover new sides of ourselves through other people. And that brings us to an important idea. In later life, friendships aren't just about companionship. They're about identity. When we build new friendships, we're not just filling a social calendar, we're expanding who we are. We're saying, I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I still matter. But I get it. Putting yourself out there still feels vulnerable. So let's talk about how to do it in a way that feels manageable. Start small. You don't need to launch into deep life stories on day one. In fact, some of the strongest bonds form slowly, through repeated, low-pressure interactions. That's why routines help so much. A weekly yoga class, a morning coffee walk, a book club. Familiar faces become friendly faces, and friendly faces become friends. You can also try a strategy called low-stakes socializing. It means initiating brief, easy conversations in casual settings. Chat with the cashier. Compliment someone's jacket. Ask your neighbor about their garden. These micro-interactions build social confidence and open the door to deeper conversations over time. And remember, your presence is a gift. You bring stories, wisdom, humor, resilience, all shaped by a life rich with experience. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You just have to be genuine. There's something truly special about friendships made in later life. They're often less about convenience and more about intention. You're not building a network for your job or your kids' playdates. You're building connections because they feed your spirit. That kind of friendship runs deep. Let's also talk about friendship and emotional health. We often hear about physical health, but emotional well-being is just as important, especially as we age. A study from the Mayo Clinic found that meaningful friendships can reduce the risk of depression, increase self-esteem, and even improve sleep quality. Why? Because friends act as mirrors and sounding boards. They remind us we're not alone, that we're seen, heard, and valued. I once knew a man named Elliot who lost his wife after 40 years of marriage. For months, he withdrew. Friends reached out, but he didn't have the energy to respond. Eventually, his adult son convinced him to join a men's grief support group. It wasn't easy. Elliot sat silently during the first few meetings. But over time, he began to open up, and so did the others. He later said that group saved him. Not because it erased his grief, but because it helped him carry it, with others by his side. He didn't just find support, he found friendship. Real, honest, healing connection. And that's another key point. Friendships don't always have to be light and bubbly. Sometimes, the most meaningful ones are those that walk with you through the hard times. Friends who can sit with you in silence, who don't try to fix you, but simply show up. So if you're going through something difficult, loss, health changes, major transitions, reach out. Vulnerability doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and it invites others to meet you there. At this point, you might be wondering, what if it doesn't work out? What if I try and still feel lonely? Here's the truth. Not every attempt will lead to a lifelong friend. And that's okay. Just like dating, friendship sometimes requires a little trial and error. You won't click with everyone, and you're not supposed to. But every step you take, every effort you make, is a step towards something better. Toward belonging. Toward joy. Toward a version of yourself that still dares to hope, connect, and grow. And don't forget, technology can be a powerful tool in this journey too. If you're comfortable with it, try using apps or websites designed for seniors to connect. Platforms like Meetup, Nextdoor, or even local Facebook groups offer ways to find nearby events or interest-based gatherings. Even video calls with distant relatives or old friends can reignite a sense of closeness. Use whatever tools feel right for you. The important thing is to stay engaged. So, what have we uncovered so far? That new friendships are not only possible, but profoundly rewarding. That fear is normal, but doesn't have to hold you back. That one small step, a class, a question, a conversation, can change everything. And that no matter your age, your presence is valuable, your stories matter, and your heart is still open to connection. In the final part, we'll bring it all together. We'll revisit the key takeaways, share a few last encouragements, and talk about what you can start doing today to create more meaningful friendships in your life. Stick with me. This last part is where it all comes full circle. So here we are, the final stretch of our journey together. And if you've made it this far, I want to say something important. I'm proud of you. Because just watching this series shows that you're open to connection. That you still believe in the power of friendship. That you're willing to grow, even when it's uncomfortable or unfamiliar. That takes courage. Let's take a breath and look back at what we've talked about. We began by acknowledging something that many people feel but few say out loud. How friendships can shift or fade as we get older. It's not a personal failing. It's a natural part of life. People move, retire, experience loss, or simply grow in different directions. But the need for connection? That doesn't go away. In fact, it becomes more important than ever. We talked about how our brains and hearts are wired for social bonds, and how friendships in later life can boost mood, sharpen memory, reduce stress, and even add years to your life. That's not just feel-good talk. That's science. We explored how to break out of isolation, showing up somewhere new, following your curiosity, or simply saying hello. We learned that fear of rejection is deeply human, but not a reason to hold back. Because sometimes, the most life-changing friendships come from the simplest beginnings. We heard real stories, like Janet, who found connection at the animal shelter. Jorge, who discovered a new side of himself through ukulele lessons. Elliot, who healed through shared grief and found purpose again in community. And we talked about emotional courage, about showing up as you are, messy, honest, real. About how deep friendships often form when we let our guard down and let someone else in. Now maybe you're thinking, this all sounds great, but what can I actually do today? I'm glad you asked. Let me share a few small, achievable steps, things you can start doing right now to invite more friendship into your life. First, reach out to one person you've lost touch with. Maybe it's been a year, maybe 20. Send a simple message. Hi, I was just thinking about you and wanted to say hello. That's it. No pressure, no expectation, just an open door. Second, look around your local community. Is there a hobby you've always wanted to try? A class, a walking group, a volunteer opportunity? Give it a shot, even if you don't know anyone there. Especially if you don't know anyone there. That's where the magic happens. Third, start noticing the people around you. The neighbor you pass on your walk. The barista who remembers your name. The person sitting alone at the library. Smile. Say hello. Compliment their scarf. The smallest gesture can plant the seed of connection. Fourth, listen. Be genuinely curious about others. Ask questions. Follow up. Be the kind of friend you'd want to meet. You might be amazed by what people open up about when they feel truly heard. And fifth, be patient with yourself. Friendships take time. Not every seed you plant will bloom, but some will. And those that do, they might surprise you. There's a beautiful quote I love by George Eliot. It is never too late to be what you might have been. That includes being a friend, a best friend, a new friend, even a mentor or companion to someone who needs you more than you know. The truth is, your life experience gives you something incredibly special. You've seen things, felt deeply, grown through pain and joy. You carry wisdom and humor and stories, and those things are gold in friendship. They're what help others feel safe and seen. So don't underestimate what you bring to the table. There's someone out there right now who would be lucky to have you as a friend. Maybe they've just moved. Maybe they're grieving. Maybe they feel like no one really gets them anymore. And you could be the one to change that. One conversation, one shared laugh, one wanna grab coffee could be all it takes. Let me leave you with one last scientific insight that I find both comforting and inspiring. A long-term study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, one of the longest studies on happiness ever conducted, found that the single strongest predictor of a happy, healthy life isn't wealth or fame or even career success. It's the quality of our relationships. Strong social connections keep us happier, healthier, and help us live longer. And it's never too late to build those. So if you're watching this and feeling a little nervous about putting yourself out there, I get it. But I also believe in you. Take the leap. Start small. Stay open. Let friendship surprise you. We'd really love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions for future topics or questions you want answered, write to us in the comments below. We're here to help, and your input could inspire our next video. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on more practical tips for healthy aging. Here's to living your best life at any age.